Blessings, friends, and I want to welcome you to this edition, special edition of This Is My Story. And today we're going to be blessed with information you just can't get everywhere. So we thank God for you joining us today. Our special guest is going to be a real estate investor, and we're going to share information on her in just a moment. Faye Smith Baker is our guest today. What I want you to do as we prepare to greet our guests and receive her, I want you to like and share. You can start your own watch party wherever you are. Bishop Andre S. Woods Facebook page, Fellowship of Music and Arts Facebook page. Also, you can go to Andre Sonny Woods. We're there. We'll be there live today. And you can also join Faye Smith Baker's page. We'll be there casting the program there today. Listen, you don't want to miss this information. And we always try to bring information to you that you can use. And certainly we do it the best way we know how, by the lives of those who make it possible. Ordinary people with extraordinary stories. That's our motto right here on This Is My Story. I want to share some information, about our guest today, and then we will start our conversation. Faye Smith Baker is the owner and principal real estate broker of Baker and Associates Realty Group, LLC, owner of Bella Sarah Property Management, LLC, owner of Baker and Associates Development, president of Empowerment and Development Housing Resource Center, HUD-approved housing counselor, and certified branch manager of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, investment division, housing counselor agency. Faye Baker, a Detroit native, and raised in Detroit, graduated from Walsh College of Accountancy and Business Administration with a bachelor degree in finance and a Master of Science in Administration degree from Central Michigan University. She has over 20 years of experience in real estate and as an investor, broker, credit counselor, and housing counselor. As principal broker of Baker and Associates Realty Group, Faye Baker specializes in representing her clients in the purchases and sale of single-family, residential, and income property. Her focus is educating and assisting first-time home buyers through the home buying process. She regularly partners with Michigan State Housing Development Authority, MISTA, to bring dynamic credit repair workshops to the community, housing fairs sponsored by MISTA and other community housing stakeholders. Faye Baker works with the community organizers and educate people in the community about the power of home ownership and how home ownership can be used as a wealth building tool. Faye also has developed managed over 20 residential properties in Detroit, Harper Woods, and Southfield. She also has received training in multiple courses with United Developers Councils and an affiliate of NAREB, nonprofit EDHRC, in community partner with the City of Detroit Land Bank Authority. Faye Baker is also at the forefront of the community, educating on low to moderate income communities and financial literacy and home ownership. She has begun building partnerships with area community banks to sponsor the initiatives of financial literacy and investing. Faye Baker has also proven ability to build and cultivate mutually respectful relationship with stakeholders. She manages and development of single-family residential property, provide comparative marketing analysis and strategy building for investors, and provide management for government subsidized single family property. Faye has a strong analytical and problem solving skills, along with the aptitude to quickly understand complex issues and propose meaningful, innovative solutions. As a HUD-approved housing counselor, Faye Baker provides a wealth of services in the community aimed at education to the public on fair housing and predatory lending. The counseling services include financial literacy, pre-purchase education, post-purchase education, and resolving or preventing mortgage delinquency, displacement, relocation, and rental education. My Lord help us. Well, I want to welcome to this platform. It is my joy to share with this phenomenal woman to the This Is My Story platform. Help me welcome Faye Baker Smith. Blessings to you and welcome to This Is My Story.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Bishop, for inviting me to share my story, and hopefully someone will learn something and maybe be inspired to get into real estate.
I'm telling you, I was reading that, my eyes was getting crossed with all the acronyms. I'm like, my Lord, it can't be nothing left to do when as far as making preparation. You have certainly, prepared yourself for this area that you are such a professional in. Listen, what I'd like for you to do is just tell us in your own words, your humble beginnings, how you got started and how you got an interest in real estate and how you've made it a career and a business.
Okay. So I guess I would say it started, I purchased my first house at 21. So I was 21 years old and I purchased my first home. The reason why I purchased my first home is, and I knew nothing about home ownership. My parents owned their home, but people look at home ownership a little differently than I do, and I'll explain it a little later. So I was in an apartment and I was looking for a place to rent. And I rode down the street. I met the landlord. He told me what my rent would be. It was $650. I got a chance to see the home. And just down the street, there was a for sale sign. So I was curious about that. I didn't know the first thing about buying a home. I didn't understand any of it. The one thing that, I did have was good credit. So I always had good credit, which we'll talk about that as well. But so ended up calling the sign, the number on the sign, and was off to learning how to buy my first home. So my first house was actually a 2-bedroom frame house right on the east side of Detroit. And I believe I purchased that house for about $24,000 back then. And that was the first step into me understanding home ownership. After that, after I lived there a couple years, the neighborhood started to change a bit. I was then a single mom. I had 2 boys, and I wanted them to be in a safe environment. So I wanted to sell the house. And I met a young lady, as a matter of fact, someone that my brother was dating. She did mortgages. And, I talked to her about selling the home and purchasing a new home. And she's asked me, why did I want to sell the house? I'm like, well, I need the money from that house to buy the new house. And so she, explained to me what equity was in a home, how to use it. And so once I understood equity, that kind of opened up some doors for me. So what I ended up doing is I rented the house out that I had because I knew that rents were going for at least $650. So I rented the house out and I took the money, the equity out of the home, and I put it down as a down payment on my new home. From then, I purchased a house in Harper Woods, 3-bedroom home, ended up renting that house out again, renting that particular property out. And I had a home built in Sterling Heights. Again, using the equity out of the home to do that and turning the second home into a rental as well. So by the time I was 32, I owned a couple rental properties. But I also worked at Chrysler. So I was in finance in Chrysler, and I had worked for Chrysler for a few years. I actually started off on the line there, and was able to use they pay for you to go to school. So I was able to get a bachelor's degree as well as a master's degree while working for Chrysler. So that was, a good opportunity for me. Kind of fast forward to 2007, 2008, when the market was down, and Chrysler was going through a bit of an economic downturn, and we were unsure if we would have a job or not. Both my husband and I both worked for Chrysler. He works with the UAW, so he was hourly and I was salaried. And it was just a time of uncertainty. And I remember coming to work and not knowing if I was going to have a job the next day. But, I still had responsibilities. I had 3 kids that had to eat. I had a house note. I had card notes. I had bills, so there was no way that I could be without a job. And, I remember thinking to myself, like, this is way too much power to give somebody over me, because your money is tied to everything that you do. Your money is tied to where you sleep, what you eat, what you drive, if you can vacation, if you can send your kids to school, so your money is tied to everything. And to be at a job where you could be let go at any time was way too much power for me to give someone over my life. And I decided that was the last time I would put myself in that position. So keep in mind that this was a time where real estate was really, the market was really soft. The houses, you could buy a really nice brick home for $5,000-$10,000. It was, it was the start of when the housing market was crashing. Because I understood real estate and I knew that I could get a passive income from rentals, I then, I took a buyout from Chrysler and I used the money to buy houses. My kids had 529 plans. I used that money to buy houses. I had a 401k. I used that money to buy houses. So all the money that I could get to buy property, that's what I did. And I was able to build an income from that. So, which was pretty substantial, because I was able to buy, I think at that time, I probably had maybe 15, 16 houses that I had purchased. So that gave me an opportunity to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And how I became a real estate agent is because at that time, real estate agents didn't really want to show you houses. The housing market, like I said, the price of a house was like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And the commission on that was so low that they didn't even want to go out and show you the homes. So I said, well, I may as well get my license so that I can see a house when I want to see it. And then 2, I would make the commission for it. So I ended up getting my real estate license just with the intent of being an investor and having the ability to go out and show myself properties. So after that, I would say maybe about 3 years into doing that, the brokerage that I worked for, they decided that they no longer wanted to be under the Keller Williams brand. So they wanted to start their own company. So I figured, well, nobody knows them and nobody knows me. So I figured, why would I go to this company and, help build their brand when I could build my own, because we're both starting at the same spot. So I started, but I did have some hesitation because I started working another job and was just a little uneasy about starting my own business because I didn't know anything about running a business. I had always worked for someone else. So I kind of prayed about it and, I'm like, Lord, I want to do this, but I just don't know if this is the right thing for me. I don't know if I can get this thing to go. And I'll never forget, I was working at a company. My manager was getting ready to retire. And he's like, well, Faye, the logical person to take my place would be you. And so, I'm going to, we'll sit down and talk about you being promoted to, run the department. I said, okay. But a couple of weeks later, there was a young lady, she started working there, and she was out of a different department, no degree. But she was friends with the manager that was going to, well, the VP that was going to be taking over, overseeing my department. And when I was getting off from work one day, I walked by his office. He's like, "Hey, Faye, did you meet your new manager?" I'm like, "My new manager?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Who?" And he told me the person's name. And I couldn't believe it because this person knew nothing about the department, didn't have the education or the experience. So I looked at him and said, "You know what? Today must be my last day." And I went and cleaned out my desk and took my broker's exam, and I was off and running ever since. I've been in real estate. So one of the things that happened is that with real estate at that time, people were losing their houses still. This was maybe 2010, 2011. So people were still losing their homes, and I was helping people do modifications on their home, helping them short sell their home so that they wouldn't lose the house, and it, take them 7 years to be able to buy another house. So I was really aggressive in doing that, and I was really good at it. So I even had agents from other offices that would ask me to do their client short sales. And so once that kind of turned around and the market started to pick back up, people were seeing equity in their homes again, and people who had lost their homes were ready to get back into the market. But the thing that stopped them from doing that is they had poor credit. So then I started teaching people about credit. One of the things that you'll find, there's always someone saying, "Hey, we can get these things off your credit, or we can, help you turn your credit around." But a lot of those things, they don't work, and then two, I believe that if you teach somebody how to clean up their credit, they'll hold on to it a lot better than they would if you were just to do it for them. And like I said, oftentimes if there's something that's on your report, credit report, that is legitimately supposed to be there, it's gonna stay. It may come off for a second if you dispute it, but most likely if it's your debt, it's gonna stay unless that creditor doesn't respond. So I started helping people get their credit together and started working with them so that they could be able to buy a home. And from that, I started working with the state of Michigan, doing credit seminars, talking about credit, the importance of credit, how to, clean up your credit if you have challenges with it. Basically getting people to the point where they would be able to qualify to buy a home. And from there, that's how my nonprofit started. So I started the nonprofit out of a need to help people, typically people who look like me, become first-time home buyers. So that's pretty much where like those multiple businesses kind of got started. There was a need for it. Each time that I started a different company, it was because there was a need where I felt like someone could be helped. So then I would say after the nonprofit, I learned that like once people would, go and get the credit together, be ready to buy a house, there is a shortage of affordable housing. Oftentimes your first house, you may spend under $100,000 for it, depending on your income level. And typically for African Americans, home ownership is, a little more difficult for us because of some of the challenges that we've had that have been generational. Oftentimes our parents may not own a home, or they owned a home, but it's been so many years that they really didn't do. Home ownership is more than just having a place to sleep or a place to hang your hat. The reason that home ownership is so powerful is because of the equity in the home and the things that it can allow you to do. And a lot of us, we don't understand finances. We don't understand money. We don't understand economic growth. So we are, we have challenges in that area. So that's another thing that my nonprofit does is we teach financial literacy, teaching you how to grow your money, how to budget your money, in addition to credit, because credit and money kind of go hand in hand. So basically, we do a little bit of, like I said, everything in housing, trying to get particularly people of color into home ownership. So, so that's the nonprofit, that's the real estate company. And we're also, like I said, we're big on education. We're big on helping that first-time home buyer, pretty much taking you from a 500 credit score to home ownership. And we have quite a few people that we have assisted in doing that.
Well, that's a lot. My God, my Lord. I was listening to you, and one of the questions that came to mind, outside of some other things I want to throw at you, is what would you say if we know Detroit has experienced up and down market when it comes to real estate, and I know in Detroit itself, a lot of people left Detroit for better housing. Is there in your mind, could you forecast how Detroit may return back to prosperity when it comes to housing and home ownership? You know, my family, we've had real estate in Detroit all my life, but then a lot of people left Detroit that I guess were renting or leasing, and some of them trying to get back, but we don't have the housing compared to, say, the suburban areas, Oak Park, Southfield, and so on. What would you say we need to do in the city of Detroit?
Well, so homeownership in the city of Detroit is about 34%. Also, the demographic makeup in Detroit, it's about, I believe last time I looked, it was 92% African American. So,
Okay.
but there is a lot of houses out there. It's just old housing stock. Like most of the homes were built in the 40s and 50s. You don't have very many new homes in Detroit. Now, what happened is when the market fell and people went in and, and pretty much just damaged the homes. They went through those houses and took out everything that they thought they could sell, which is unfortunate for the neighborhoods because that's where they start to devalue the homes. I know my parents still live in Detroit prior to the economic downturn of the housing market. Their house probably was worth about $130,000. After, the dust settled and, the neighborhood was torn apart, their house was, they would be lucky to get $30,000 out of it. And so what happened is that's literally like someone coming into your home and robbing you, because again, that's the equity that we talked about. That equity is what unlocks financial doors. That equity is that thing that money that you could take and send a kid to college. That's the money that you can take and start a business. That's the money that you can take and buy a rental property. So the power in homeownership is in the equity. And so when the housing market fell and the Detroit neighborhoods kind of fell with it, it was like they were wiped out. But I don't think people understand it in those terms, because if they did, I believe they would protect it more. So it's like if you had, a bank account and you had $100,000 in your bank account, if your money was starting to dwindle away, I think you'd say, wait a minute, what's going on? How we need to fix this? Somebody needs to jump in and do something. But because it's tied to our house and we live in it and we don't understand financials, we didn't, raise our hand that way. But the suburbs, they did. If you notice the suburbs, everybody was losing money, everybody was having issues, but nobody suffered like the city of Detroit. You have to ask yourself, why is that? We were all going through it. People that, were losing their homes at the same rate, but why did Detroit look the way that it looked afterwards, and why didn't the suburbs look like that? It's because they understood they were not allowing people to go into the homes and take out the furnace and sell them. Like who buys a used furnace? Like if a furnace is working 9 times out of 10, it's still going to be in the home. But those things were allowed to take place in Detroit, and they were not allowed to take place in the suburbs. So to that point, you have a lot of homes that are pretty much just in horrible shape. And the ownership of those houses, most of them, a lot of them are owned by the City of Detroit Land Bank. I believe the City of Detroit Land Bank is the biggest owner of single family homes in the country, because of what took place. And again, because we don't understand housing, you could have a grandparent that had a home and they hand it down to the kid, or a grandchild, and they'll say, oh no, this is, the house needs too much work, I'm just going to walk away. You never walk away from a home. But that is the mentality that we have. We also have an issue in Detroit where people of color feel like home ownership is too much of a burden. They look at basically, well, if I own a home, if something happens to it, I have to get it fixed. They don't understand that rent is much higher than a house note. Whenever a landlord charges you rent, they're building a profit into that. They're building repairs into that. I'm a landlord. So whenever I rent out a house, I'm covering all costs. I'm covering repairs, whether they happen or not, as well as I'm going to get a profit from it. So you're going to be paying much more in rent than you would be for home ownership. So I think that's something that we need to understand. Now, in some zip codes in Detroit, they're doing extremely well. They're back to where they were prior to the market falling down. But in a lot of places, not so much. And that's because of the blight that's there. So there are a few things that can happen, just like gentrification, right? So these neighborhoods, they're totally devalued. You have people who don't look like us that come in, they renovate those homes and they start populating the area. And then what happens, you get retail that comes into the space, and then the value of the homes go up. But those are things that we could do ourselves. There's literally, like, you could get a home from the Detroit Land Bank for $1,000 or less. And then you renovate that home, you live in that home, you can then have a family member move next door and then they renovate the home. That's how you build the wealth, the wealth in home ownership. You get your neighborhood up. Once your neighborhood becomes desirable, then that's money all day long. But you have to get it to that point. So instead of allowing other people to come in through gentrification and doing that, because it's the same process, right? That is something that we could do ourselves, but we don't think to do that. We're like, no, let's just throw it away and go. And the moment you throw it away and it appears worthless, then other people come in because, they can't make any more land. Man can manufacture just about anything, but land is one thing they have not been able to manufacture. So you want to, make sure you hold on to your property. So the housing market, a lot of it, the houses that are in horrible shape, they're tearing it down. It's nothing but land. There are some places on the east side of Detroit you could go, and it's land everywhere. That's an opportunity, that's an opportunity to go in and build a house, basically, build a whole, 3 or 4 blocks of houses if you wanted to. So there is an opportunity there, but it's also, the challenge is getting the state to help, because they can. The state has money. There's federal and state dollars that could help with that. You have banks that have a responsibility to the neighborhoods that they operate in. They have what's called CRA. They have money that's supposed to be to help people in the community, and we don't hold them accountable to that. So we pay our taxes, we pay, but we don't get the benefit that the suburbs get. So we need to know what's due us and how do we fix this issue with housing, because affordable housing is an issue right now. Like I said, I do housing counseling. I have people who come in and they pay over 50% of their income in housing, which is ridiculous. It's not sustainable, which means that if your car breaks down, then that means you have to choose between getting to work and paying your rent. If you miss a day of work because your kid was sick, that could put you in a position where you're going to be homeless. So every decision that you make, as far as your financials, it shouldn't be a choice between having a place to lay my head and eating, or getting to work, or buying my kids some shoes. So we have to be smarter with our money and know what to ask for, and know who we should be asking.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask you this, because I've dived a little bit into it some years ago when I was a member of the MacDougall Citizen District Council near downtown, and we were dealing with Eastern Market Project, and then all of that area from Gratiot and Shane all the way back down to I-94. It's all wiped out. And there were some brothers talking about doing some things. And you you work with development, is that right? As well?
I do.
Okay. Let me just ask you this. What is the chances of a small grassroots group, say of some nonprofits that form an LLC and come together to do development? Because there was one time we were looking at doing something, and I'm not that excited about what I saw, what they was presenting as far as infill housing, as opposed to just go ahead on, the house is about to fall, and why would you want to put a house next to this house? And then, like you said, they've come through to that neighborhoods. Either if they didn't burn them down, they stripped them and stole all the copper, all the moldings off some of these old houses that perhaps could have been saved, could have been gutted and renovated. So my question is infill housing better than just developing a new community?
No, so it depends on the landscape, right? And the money that's available, and how are you going to go about getting the money? So if you're going to do affordable housing, meaning that, it's going to be 30% of the area median income, or, so what's the plan? So if you're going to do affordable housing, you may be able to get a whole block of houses, right? You will have some that need to be renovated and some that will be infill. So right now, the renovation cost is just as much to build a new house, because the houses need to be, pretty much stripped down to the studs in order to make it, livable. So as a developer, and to your point, I think it would be an awesome opportunity for a group of nonprofits to come in and kind of help rebuild Detroit, getting involved with the city of Detroit Land Bank, because again, they have all the houses. If you go on their website, there's a mapping that they have, and you can see how many houses that the land bank owns in a particular neighborhood. And sometimes it's shocking just to see they own blocks of houses. So if you come in and say, hey, we've been able to get to know, like, even if you start off small, and I'm going to call small like $500,000, right? You might be able to renovate one house for $100,000. But if you know you got the whole block, then you renovate, you sell that house, then you take that money and you wash, and you repeat the process. So, but the thing is, you got to have people that are willing to come in. Now, the challenge that you're going to have initially starting is the value of the home that you can sell it for, and what you're putting into it. There's a big disconnect right there. So you're going to have to, it's going to have to be heavily subsidized, which means you're going to have to get money from your city. Like, they have money for that. They have money that is given to them, from the federal government, from the state, that can be used for that. But the money, it seems like it's so difficult to really get things done in the city of Detroit unless you're connected. So, but there is a way to do it. And it's, if you could, again, like I said, banks, there are banks. The city has seven, I believe it's seven strategic neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods are being adopted by a bank. And if you get into one of those neighborhoods where they're already doing development, in that neighborhood that you just talked about, which is the McDougal Hunt neighborhood, there's a lot going on down there. I don't know if you've been down there recently, but there is a significant amount of development that's going on there. So, so what you want to do is, like, if they're already in that neighborhood doing things, if you can kind of join in and help from the single family perspective, that would be a great opportunity. And it is much needed, again, because to your point before, there's not a lot of housing that's viable. It's a lot of blight in the city. But to get together with a group of nonprofits with a similar mission, that are able to go in and not only just build the homes and do infill and as well as rehab, but you're probably gonna have to do, new housing, but you have to get maybe use LIHTC dollars, because especially if it's going to be for affordable housing. And I'm big on not just having low income housing, but mixed income housing. I don't think it's a good idea to have a bunch of poor people in one spot. I think everything needs to be mixed, and you have to make the neighborhoods so that you have a mixed demographic that wants to come and join that neighborhood. So again, there is a lot of opportunity. And if you know of some nonprofits that want to do something like that, I would love to sit and have the conversation, because that can definitely happen. That's one of the things that I'm doing. As a matter of fact, like I said, I'm a community partner with the city of Detroit, with the Detroit Land Bank, and we're actually starting with rehabbing our first house now, and it should be finished within a week. So my goal is to take a person who I help them with their credit. We do the financial literacy piece. We do the home buyers education piece. The end product is the home that they'll be able to move into, but we're also available to them after they move into the home, because oftentimes, what we do is, like, if we maybe get behind on a mortgage or something like that, we don't reach out to anybody. We kind of just sit in silence and, we pray about it and hope that it'll go away. And as we know, that doesn't happen. You'd have to be able to reach out to someone. So as a HUD certified housing counselor, I'm that person you'd reach out to, like, hey, Faye, I ran into a problem. We need to talk. So we come in, we look at what we can do. We look at whatever resources are available to you. Sometimes, we just don't manage our money well. Like, we have the money, it's just poor management. So we mismanage ourselves out of housing. So, but to be able to come in and sit with someone and have them look at your bank statements and look at your spending habits and tell you exactly what you need to do, and also hold you accountable. So I don't fix it. You have to fix it, because if you fix it, you can maintain it. If I fix it and, like, hey, here it is, it's done, you don't know what I did. You don't know how to make sure that you don't get into that boat again. So that's what post-purchase counseling does. We do that as well, because not only do we want you to get your credits together and become a homeowner, we want you to stay a homeowner, because we understand that equity that we talked about. We understand that wealth building, and that's what homeownership is. It's actually a wealth building tool. That's probably the easiest way that I can think of to build wealth in America, is through homeownership. But we have to understand that piece.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me ask you this: Are you currently, or have you worked in the past with, say, any religious organization, churches, or nonprofits of the nature?
Yep, I do. So
Okay.
I go in and I do home buyers education classes. I do
Okay.
financial literacy classes. I do budgeting classes, because, again, we want to get that information out. People always say, my parents didn't teach me about finances. And when I was growing up, I didn't know anything about credit. Well, we have to understand you can't teach what you don't know. So if your parents didn't know it, they couldn't teach it. So oftentimes it's not taught in the homes, it's not taught in the schools. So where are you supposed to learn it? Through trial and error? That's probably not the best way, especially if you could get someone that can teach it to you and maybe teach it to your kids. And then that way, you know, you don't have this, this dysfunction, you know, from generation to generation. And the reason why I know that if it's taught early, it'll stick is because I have 3 boys. And my oldest is 30. I have a 25-year-old and a 19-year-old. The 30-year-old and the 25-year-old, they are phenomenal. Like, I'm in awe at how they handle their financials. I mean, they're on it. They're on it from the savings to the investing. They don't spend more than they make. They scrutinize every purchase. I mean, they're phenomenal. You know, but again, it was because it was something that was taught in the home. They didn't have to bump their head and make all the mistakes, you know, because it was, you know, they had someone teaching them, you know, from very young age. And so my 19-year-old, I have no doubt that he would be the same way, because that's, you know, that's what they were taught. Again, it was taught in the home. It wasn't like they had to go to school to learn it. You know, they had a mom that was like, hey, this is what you do. This is how you do it. My oldest, he, you know, was out of college for 2 years and purchased his first home. He purchased his house for, I can't remember, it was like 100 and some thousand. The market is such that when he sells his home, he's going to make over $100,000 on a property that he only held for 4 years. But that's home ownership. That's what it does. That's that equity. That's that power we were talking about. And even though he's relocating to another state, he's like, Mom, I think I'm gonna still buy a house, even if because he's not gonna stay in that state, you know, for many years, maybe 2 or 3 years at the most. So he said, well, instead of doing that, I may rent a place, but I'm gonna take the money that I make from my house and I'm going to buy a house and then rent that out. So he'll still be making money in real estate, which is the best. I mean, and he brought that idea up. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. That's exactly what I would do. So, you know, that lets me know that they, you know, if you teach them when they're young, it'll stick, you know, and then they'll be able to pass that down to their kids. So then you'll break that generational curse of not having wealth in your family. And the same thing with my middle baby. He's in the Air Force, and he's coming out next year. He's already like, Mom, you know, I'm getting out of the Air Force next year, and I'm going to buy a home. I'm like, awesome. And again, he's 25. Like, most 25-year-olds are not talking about buying a home. They're looking for that fancy car, or you know, buying that, you know, the clothes and stuff. That my kids don't do that. Like, they are about making sure that they're building wealth, you know, and, you know, like I said, they're pretty good at it.
Great. Let me ask you this. I mean, they coming in the comment section. Angela Smith says, sign me up. You ready to go to work. Angela, we're going to provide you with contact information in a moment. Just hold on. Now, what about commercial properties or real estate? Do you work with commercial as well, you know, as far as building? Because I had a couple of guys calling me. They trying to get something going to build studios. You know, those of us that work in music, you know, Detroit still has a strong musical legacy. And a lot of our studios moved away and shut down. You know, Barry Gordy went to LA but Detroit is coming back slowly. Those of us that do gospel and jazz and all of that. But do you work with commercial as much as residential?
Well, I'm licensed to work with commercial, but commercial is not my passion. My passion is really helping people of color get into housing, because, you know, of all the challenges that we had with getting into housing, you know, the Fair Housing Act didn't come out to 1968, which, you know, that said that Black folks could actually buy houses. It was against the law to discriminate. But,
Mhm.
even back then, it was still happening. Even to this day, it still happens. We get discriminated, with redlining. Our
Yes.
houses are devalued. Whenever a Black person moves into, a neighborhood, if there's too many of us, then the value of the houses go down, simply just by us being there, because there's a stigma with Black folks in neighborhoods. So, so my passion is home ownership, getting, us to understand why it's important. Because if you think about it, why would they not allow us to buy houses for so long? Why it was actually against the law for against the federal law for Black people to own a home. Most people, when so grandparents and things like that, if they owned a home, 9 times out of 10 they get it on a land contract, and that land contract had very, very high interest rates, and they overpaid for the home. Whereas our white counterparts were getting these very low interest rate loans from the federal government. The federal government would not give a loan to a Black person. Even to this day, if you look at some of the deeds on houses, it was a deed restriction that the house couldn't even be sold to a Black person on the secondary market.
Yeah.
So, so we've always had challenges in housing. And as I stated before, home ownership is the quickest way to build wealth. I mean, just imagine if you own several homes, you'd be a millionaire, just with the property. So that's the easiest way. And like I said, I purchased several homes, and those houses put my kids through college. My oldest graduated from Michigan State, with no, I made him take out maybe, I think it was like $3,000 or $4,000 a year, because I believe it's his education. He should have some skin in the game. But the rest of it, I paid with rental properties. My middle son, the same thing. And my youngest son, my middle son went to Oakland University, and my youngest son goes to Ferris State. And it's the same thing. Those same properties pay for their education, which, $100,000 for education, they don't have that debt because of home ownership. And it was never well, you can't go to school unless you, have, dribble a ball, or, none of that. It's like, hey, we have the money, just go, that was it. So again, those are things that I couldn't have done without equity in a home or home ownership. That's the
Wow.
easiest way to build wealth.
Wow. Wow. That sounds like a winner to me. Let me ask you this. In buying property, because I've taken the time in past times, even before this pandemic, to just drive through Detroit and look at the landscape, cross Connors, from Connors down Jefferson, from Mac, and that far east side where I grew up. Looking at the change in the neighborhood. Some areas were not touched since the riots.
Mhm.
But what I am seeing and have seen in the last year or so, year or two, even before the pandemic, how people are migrating back into Detroit, uh, gobbling up these rental properties. I'm talking about the other people, the
Mhm.
folk that left.
Right.
Black folk moved out, other folk coming back, buying up the houses they left, renovating them, or they're
Mhm.
doing an even exchange. And especially down in that area of Kerchevo, near Indian Village,
Yeah.
all of that area. I mean, they out walking their dogs, they putting up
Going
coffee
for a
shops
job.
and boutiques. I mean, when you go down there, they even got their own park that they
Mhm.
made over behind Van Dyke and Agnes area, where the Parkstone apartments are, and all of those. Used to be nothing but college kids stayed down in that area. And
Mhm.
it's coming back so quick and vibrantly until, I like what you said. A lot of people wanted to sell and get out when they should have held on to property here in Detroit, because now, the comeback has started, and people want to come back. But you sold your house, you sold your business. And so now other people have taken those buildings, renovated them, and
Mhm.
thriving. It's
Right.
amazing what's happening. So when I'm looking at a piece of property that's totally leveled, no housing, nothing, or it's just vacant land. Now, in the land bank of Detroit, we can buy that land. And are you into also helping developers build from the ground?
Yes. So, yep. So new build as well as, so that would be infield, especially, if there are other
Yeah.
houses around, of course. But the way that to do that is there's money, like the city of, like, even for like the residents that still live there, there's money available to them to rehab the houses that they live in. Now, the issue is like they have a 0% interest loan that you could take to rehab your home. The challenge that we have is we have poor credit, so we can't access it. There's also at a federal level, there's these loans called Title I loans. You don't even have to have equity in the home. They'll give you $25,000 without even placing a lien on your home. You just have to have decent credit and have the capacity to pay it back. Again, we don't manage our money well enough to have capacity to pay back, and we don't make sure that we have decent credit. So those are the things. So we're limited to the money that we have access to because of how we handle our financials. So just for instance, so let's say you say, hey, you know what, I got this house. There's a piece of land that's right next door to it. So you buy that house. You can go, like I said, you could get a 0% interest loan to rehab that home. You can get it through a Title I. They can, like I said, you don't even have to have equity in the home to do that. But as long as you can pay the money back, you can own that home day one. You don't even have to live in it. You can have it as an investor. Then the city of Detroit had a program where you could buy the land next door. And if you wanted to put a house on that, you could, so even if you buy that first house, rehab it, sell that, and then use those proceeds to have that house built. But the challenge that you have most of the times is having comparable homes in that area that sell for the amount that you need to sell it for to make a profit. So that's why in some of these neighborhoods, unless you plan on living there for a while or even renting them out, but you got to have sales, right? So you got to have someone that's willing to come in and buy those houses. So the only way that you're going to really be able to do that and make the numbers make sense quickly is through having it subsidized. It's going to have some heavy subsidies. So you're going to have to talk to your banks like, hey, you guys, MBD, not MBD, but Chase Bank, you're in this neighborhood, you guys have money that's meant to help the neighborhood. We're doing something good for the neighborhood by putting housing here. Can you help subsidize this? What type of programs do you have? So if you know the right people to talk to, it may be, the lift, especially if you have, to your point before, a group of people in the city that are nonprofits that really want to do some good for the city, and you get to talk to the right people because those banks, they love to say what they've done for neighborhoods. So you just have to be able to speak to the right people to say, hey, here's an opportunity for you to look great and help some people at the same time. And so to your, to, like I said, to your earlier point, just getting that group together that's on the same page, that really want to help the people of Detroit. I think that's something that could be done.
That's great. That's great. So the investors, well, I know I've seen investors come and leave, that were outside of Detroit. But the Detroiters, I think some of them are, at least I've heard some people talking about it, trying to form a crew and come together and reinvest in Detroit to make it Detroit again. Because I remember down Shane, they had their own fruit market, the little mom and pop stores, all of the restaurants, the ice cream shops and all of that the suburbs now have. They had just barbershops, shoe stores, clothing stores, everything. And it's gone, but I just believe that there's a way for it to come back. So how does a group contact you, and if they're interested in doing development, Well, let me ask this question first. Business credit as opposed to personal credit, when you talk about forming a business model to do housing, should a person use their personal credit or the business credit?
I like to use business credit. I leave my credit free and clear. But like I said, all of my companies have credit, but they had to start out using my credit, and they couldn't use my credit if my credit was bad, right? So, I'm able to get credit in, my company's name. My real estate company owns real estate, owns a commercial property. So I use business credit. For me, it's a little easier, but if you don't have, if your credit isn't strong, it's a little more difficult to get your business credit because you have to be a guarantor of it. And it's, banks don't, if your credit is, then that's another thing. So just making sure that, your credit is good so that you have access to capital, because oftentimes that's the hardest thing, right? Is having access to capital. We all have these great business ideas. We all know, we have this thing that we're passionate about. The thing that stops us from moving forward oftentimes is lack of financial resources and capital.
Yeah. Now there's a question, and I was going to ask that question. Thank you, Angela Smith. She asked, do you do one-on-one credit counseling, or do you do classes?
We do both. So we do one-on-one as well as classes. So, and I can provide you with that phone number. It's 586-315-4013. That's to the nonprofit, or to get help if you need help with your credit, if you need help with your budget, if you need home buyers education classes, post-purchase classes, or if you just want to sit down and talk to someone and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. What do I need to do to strengthen myself financially so that I can get to where I'm trying to go?
Okay, so that, I hope you answered your question, Angela. She's in the comments section, and she's really rolling with us today. I appreciate you. And she's got all kind of questions concerning real estate and trying to find out how to get to you. So she might be one of your next clients next week, calling your office to get some information. We appreciate you sharing with us. Let me ask you this. I guess one of the last questions we can ask, when it comes to the city of Detroit, I mean, we're seeing where we're back into another race again. The mayor, we might have a new mayor, we might not have a new mayor. City council is changing all of that. We got to jump the hurdles and go through all the red tape. In your estimation, all of the real estate properties right outside of Detroit, say coming down the main thoroughfares, Gratiot, you got Grand River, all of these main streets, Jefferson, leading out of Detroit. But I'm specifically, I guess I'm just pro East Side, because I've been an East Sider just about all of my life. I lived in Southfield for a minute, but what should developers, what should be first on their list if they're looking at all of these blighted areas in approaching the city with a proposal to partner?
So one of the things that you want to make sure is that there are other people in that area as well. It's a little more difficult just to say, like I have a passion for 48205, right? Because I was raised there, and it's heavily blighted, but there are no new developments over there. So it's harder to get people to take a look at it. But if you go to where that McDougal Hunt area is, and then that next neighborhood over, because it has to kind of sprawl out, right? It's harder to start something where there's no one there. But if there's already activity and development going on in that area, it's a little easier for you to get in there. But you have to, you may not be able to get in that one spot because that's where everybody's already drawn to that. So you may go like the next neighborhood out. And that's how you see growth. You identify that next neighborhood. So that is definitely, an opportunity. But again, like, if you feel like, like this is the area that I want, I know no one's over here yet, you have to figure out, how do I draw an interest over there? Like, how do I get people to pay attention to this area? How do I get money for this area? And again, like I said, the federal government has dollars for it. You just have to know, you have to put your project together so that the state, when you send it to the state and they have these, the LIHTC dollars, when they have their application open, being able to submit your application so that they can say, you know what, I agree with you. This would be a great opportunity for the neighborhood if we were to put housing here. Because what happens when you have housing, then you get commercial too, because once it's heavily populated, then you'll get all those trendy coffee shops that want to come over there. You'll get all these other businesses, restaurants and things like that want to do business in Detroit as well. So I would say identify your neighborhood, put together a solid business plan for it, and submit it, and see, if you can get funding for it, because that's what it's about. You can have the best plan in the world, but if you can't get the money for it, it can't go anywhere. And you may even be able to get investors if you have private investors, and not have to use, government money. And that's a challenge. Like crowdfunding, if you have, people that are willing to put up 10 people that can put up $50,000. As long as you can give them a good return on their investment, you just have to make sure that the numbers make sense. When you do your pro forma, make sure that the money, that the dollars make sense. And that may be a way, because I know people do that as well through crowdfunding.
Right. Well, we'll have to call you, because those of us like myself, like some of the guys I'm talking to now, the preachers and the musicians and their expertise are in other areas. They got vision now. They've got ideas and talking about them, but to really put it on paper and to put it in writing so that it would read right and in a proposal form, they're going to definitely need a professional like yourselves. So you do offer counseling in this area, or you walk people through the process and working with groups to develop their project or their plan?
No, so I do that for homeowners, for people who want to become homeowners. So that part is where I do the education piece. The financial literacy and things like that. As far as the development side, I work with a group of people that I, submit my development plans to, try to find funding, and just knowing there are organizations out there though that do support you and that do help you put together, put your best foot forward, understanding how to put together your financial stack, how to go ask for the money, who do you ask for the money, what type of money is available when you get this money, how does it have to be used? So that's how I know that there is a ton of money. There's a lot of money out there. You just have to know how to access it. And again, if you want to do affordable housing, there's even more money that may be available to you. But if you're doing market rate housing, you may have to go through getting, money, like I said, crowdfunding, getting money from other places. So it just depends on what type of housing are you trying to do.
Yeah. Okay, Nate Baker's on. He says, hi, do you also help with creating business plan?
No, I don't do that.
You just answered the question.
Yeah, no, I don't do that.
Yeah, because I think that's the missing piece for a lot of the groups. Because years ago I had a nonprofit. I was working with a housing corporation, and when we was with McDougall Hunt, and they got HUD to do infill housing in some of the area back then. But I'm going all the way back to the empowerment zone days when they were really looking at particular neighborhoods to do development, and some of it started happening, and then some of the players, I don't know what happened, because I was always gone. I don't know what happened to the projects, but there is an interest now. That's why I was asking those questions. So I'm gonna be talking to these guys, and on the credit end, they'll probably want to get with you to see what they need to do on the credit end to put their sales in the proper position, and then probably. Have you heard of the development bank, the nonprofit bank that's downtown?
No, you said it's called the Development Bank?
Yeah, it's called Detroit Development Bank. They are
No.
nonprofit. I know a couple of people that work there, and just what you're talking about, I think they are working with that kind of funding. So they're
Mhm.
there. They used to be a part of the Shore Bank that was here only
Okay.
for a short period. Yeah, Shore Bank, and when Shore Bank left Detroit again, I think one of the investors, the guy, started Detroit Development Bank, and they
Okay.
took on, servicing projects and helping startup businesses get funded, and helping them out, and especially with real estate, buying houses and flipping houses, all of that kind of stuff. So,
Okay.
but listen, this has been, I mean, educational to me. I've been trying to write notes and listen at the same time, but thank God for modern technology. We can go back and hear this again. And to all of our friends, thank you for joining us. Now she can't give all her secrets away. She's in the business. So yeah, all of you that want to contact Faye Smith Baker, we put the number there in the comments section, the 586-315-4013. And you'll be able to contact there and tell us how to reach you, your Facebook page, and your business, your website, or whatever else, however they can reach you.
So my real estate business, the website is BA, like Baker Associates, Realty Group. .com. So that's BARealtyGroup.com. And then the nonprofit is E like Edward, D like David, HRC. So it's Empowerment and Development Housing Resource Center. So all the first letters, the initials to that, .com. So those are the two websites.
Do it one more time.
So BARealtyGroup.com and edhrc.org.
All right. I hope y'all got that, because I'm trying to write it while she's talking. Angela Smith, she just always say, sign me up, sign everybody up. Tyra Thomas, Shonda Robinson. We want to thank all of you that's chiming in. We ain't gonna start reading names, because if I miss somebody, they'll send me an inbox, say you didn't call my name. So I'm gonna leave that alone. They be fussing at me about that. Well, listen, I want to thank you for taking your time today and sharing with us this information. And your journey is such a positive one, and how you started and how you've been blessed to navigate and be where you are, successful in business. And we thank you, because we need more positive role models, that we can be able to share with all the negative stuff that's online and on TV and everywhere else. This is refreshing to hear your story and how you've been blessed to create for yourself and family a legacy. And I appreciate you today, and thank all of you for chiming in. If you missed any part of this, we welcome you to go back to Bishop Andreas Wood's page, or any of those pages that we mentioned, Andreas Woods. You'll be able to find this particular presentation, and it'll also be on our page, Bishop Andreas Woods YouTube channel. Thank you, Mrs. Baker, for sharing
Thank
your
you for
time
having me.
today, and we appreciate you. And listen, we will be in touch, because what we're also planning, probably at the end of the fall, is I'm planning a business networking seminar. I don't know if we're going to do it virtually, because we may be able to get out and meet, but We ain't trusting that yet. So we
Right.
might be doing something virtual where people that are looking for resources and information, you can be one of those on that panel to help people with some resources and understanding the real estate market and real estate game. Thank you. Bless you
Absolutely. I'd
all.
love
And
to.
I want to pray before we leave. We always pray, and then we'll be out. All right. All right, Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this privilege, and we thank you for Faye Smith Baker for taking the time and sharing her expertise, sharing her journey unselfishly with us, giving us information, God, that I pray that our people, our public will be able to use. Thank you for this transforming information. And we ask now your blessings continually upon her and her family, her business, and whatever her hands touch. We pray, God, according to your word, Psalms 90 and 17. And Lord, let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon her. Establish the work of her hands upon her. Yea, the work of thy hands, establish thou it. So we thank you, God, for where you brought her, you keeping her. And we know, God, the latter shall be greater than the former. Thank you for where you're taking her, that she may continue to be a blessing, not only to her family, but for the community at large. So we give you praise and we honor you. It's in the matchless name of Jesus we pray. Amen and thank God. All right,
Amen.
appreciate you. We will be
Thank
in
you.
touch. Look for a text or something. And
Okay.
thank you, people, for joining us. And we'll see you next week at the same time, 4 p.m. This is my story with Bishop Andre Woods.